Due to mature subject matter, viewer discretion is advised. Close your eyes.
You gotta love this place.
Imagine a new world.
They cry and they roar and they carry on.
One that's comic, decadent, spiritual, and free.
Freedom and expression, thumbing your nose at the establishment.
We considered ourselves like a monastery.
If you're out to save the world, you can make it in a school bus.
Places to do as you please.
I read some porn, I lazed on the couch, I painted somebody's fingernails.
You need a spanking! I can kind of get full of myself here and look at all the reflections.
Wear what you want. Or not.
I will guarantee one thing, I won't go nude.
Pursue your dreams by the rules you create.
Marijuana can teach you that there are other levels of consciousness.
Weird or wonderful, these places exist in America.
We're part of the planet, part of the universe. We're celebrating life.
For the next hour, open your eyes to a very different view of the world, where Burning Men dance.
I need more fire in my life!
And communal spirits thrive. Some might call it freaky and twisted.
I'm searching for a large goat.
Others swear it's heaven and beyond.
I come back to the farm because it's my home and my heart.
You decide as MSNBC Reports takes you inside these alternative worlds.
It's the most psychedelic experience I've ever had in my life.
Where thousands live in love to the beat.
What a trip.
Of a different drum. Here's Forrest Sawyer.
Hello, everyone. In today's world where the 9-to-5 rat race reigns, conformity runs rampant, and you hear all that talk about a global village, it's easy to forget that there are still some places where people can, if only for a short time, chase the myth of utopia, that perfect society where anyone can do almost anything as long as nobody gets hurt. Well, you're about to experience two of them. At last count, there were around 600 such experimental communities, some seasonal, some year-round, scattered all across the United States. But for pure outrageousness, none of them holds a candle to the one they call Burning Man.
Even now, more than 30 years after Woodstock, places where an aging hippie can still thumb his nose at the establishment, and the soon-to-be responsible can perhaps get a final taste of raging against the machine. One such place exists in the barren Nevada desert, and as summer draws to a close each year, some 30,000 people make the long journey to Burning Man.
Burning Man is an instant city of art and creativity and imagination, and it's unforgettable for everybody who participates.
Welcome to the wildest city the West has ever seen. It's a yearly countercultural romp with larger-than-life works of art, unpredictable turns of weather, and an eclectic population of artists, dot-commies, ravers, lots of people who like to be nude, and lots of people who like to look at them.
Putting on costumes and letting their hair go free and being naked if they want to be, or painting their bodies all up in bright colors, or, it's just wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Burning Man's a place to experiment with your looks, survive the elements, and play to your heart's content. Who says you still can't turn on, tune in, and drop out?
My new name is Princess Daisy. Why is it Princess Daisy? Because I'm a daisy, I'm a flower. And I'm a princess, of course.
I wear a suit and a tie to go to work, and I call that my costume. What I had on last night, my chaps and thong and leather jacket, that is comfortable to me. Wearing a suit, and I look at someone with a button down and wingtips as a freak.
It all takes place during Labor Day week, along 40 miles of dry lake bed in the Blackrock Desert of Nevada, 120 miles north of Reno. They call this parched landmass the Playa, and the makeshift town, Blackrock City. In fact, it's only a city when the Burning Man people are here, sometimes a month before the festival, setting up their theme camps and techno art, or getting cozy in their RVs. Otherwise, it's a vast, empty place, miles from nowhere.
It's a planet. This is a place that actually gives you a feeling of, I got it, we're on a planet.
Rick Marin of the New York Times is making the pilgrimage to Burning Man for the first time on the advice of some friends. He can't believe what he's seeing.
The ground is dry and caked and cracked, and it just looks like, the end of the earth. And in the middle of this, these people erect this whole city, this little mini city. It's really strange. I mean, you feel like you've landed on the moon.
Throw in a little Thunderdome, Cirque du Soleil, and Mardi Gras, and you're about halfway there.
I still have my pajamas on. I haven't put on my costume yet. I'm going to be a big watermelon later.
Famous Melissa.
Famous Melissa?
Yes, I've been that for 20 years.
Really? What makes you famous?
What makes me famous? Well, I wasn't about to wait around to become famous. It was a Zen thought, you know, you either are or you're not.
Here, you can be as zen as you want, as long as you obey the rules. And Larry Harvey is the guy who makes them.
You can do anything as long as it doesn't endanger anyone, and as long as it can be accepted by other people as a gift to them. And now that's enormous liberty, you know.
If a certain amount of lawlessness, nudity, and enormous personal freedom are at your cup of tea, then Burning Man's a place to avoid. But for its zealous supporters, Burning Man's Forum for Radical Self-Expression makes it a one-of-a-kind event. During the week, no show business acts are booked to perform. So, instead of a rock concert, you might find some people from the next tent performing a semi-nude opera or tending goal in a human foosball game. At Burning Man, attendees create the entertainment themselves.
I haven't found anywhere else in the world where I can dress up like this and become sheriff by just saying that I want to be sheriff. Oh my God, I've been shot by the... Oh. But you didn't shoot the deputy, I bet.
This isn't a show that we've put on for spectators. Everyone who lives in this city is producing it for one another, and they're not charging each other.
While there aren't a lot of rules here, there are lots of overriding philosophies. For example, the use of money at Burning Man is frowned upon.
When we came here, we instituted a utopian rule, and that is there would be no buying and selling.
So, while it does cost a pretty penny to get into Burning Man, tickets run anywhere from $85 to $250, depending on when you buy them. Once you're in, there isn't much to buy.
Free sunshine!
There's coffee and ice at the Burning Man Cafe, but that's it. Like all the others here, Rick Marin had to put his wallet away.
You're supposed to barter, not pay for anything. So once you get there, if you don't have food, you can't buy any food. Or you could go like sing a song to somebody in exchange for like a hot dog, I suppose.
Festival organizers say bartering forces you to meet and interact with your neighbors. This guy traded handmade stickers for the things he wanted.
I've been getting glow sticks, I got personal lubricant, I got handy wipes, other stickers, a lighter, advice, a massage.
Whoa!
Yeah, from a very strong woman. I needed it.
Logos and corporate branding of any kind are also no-nos here. So many cover up the company names on their rental trucks and wear logo-free clothing. In true radical spirit, Rick Marin early on decides to test the waters of nonconformity.
Just to like rile things up, the first day I wore this t-shirt, an old CAA t-shirt that I have, Creative Artists Agency, you know, the Hollywood Talent Agency. As soon as I rode out on my bike, people were like, CAA, burn in hell.
Coming up, who are these people? Where do they come from? And how far out does it really get? Meet the man behind the movement.
Let's see what happens next.
Why Burning Men prefer marching to the beat of his different drum. When MSNBC Reports continues.
Back at Burning Man, a storm is brewing on the playa. Well known for its jarring temperature shifts, Blackrock City also gets its share of sudden, swirling dust storms. So why would anyone pay $250 to put up with days of this? As dust loaded with alkali from the lake bed bombards the playa, the party never misses a beat at the Center Camp Cafe, a tented 24-hour hangout that makes the bar in Star Wars look as tame as happy hour at the Holiday Inn. When the dust settles, the assembled gear up for another day at the world's weirdest counterculture carnival.
I ate a cherry Pop-Tart, I read some porn, I lazed on the couch, I painted somebody's fingernails. What more do you want?
I'm getting my signals crossed. For the most part, the people who come here are educated and employed. Many work in Northern California's Silicon Valley and often plan their trip here months in advance. So what draws them to the desert?
I came to be part of it, and because it primarily touched my tribal, my sense of community that I've been without for so long.
While some are looking for a group to connect with, others may be looking to, temporarily at least, live like have-nots.
Well, you're camping out in arduous conditions. That's, I suppose, an experience of have-not. There's a little bit of a, homelessness in terms of your exposure to the elements. But it's the opposite of homelessness in terms of if there's anything you want or need here, you can go ask somebody and you'll get it.
Stuart Brand is a regular at Burning Man. You may remember him as the creator of the Whole Earth Catalog, a wildly eclectic late 60s compilation of tools, technologies, and ideas for living in post-war America in places like communes. These days, Brand lives on a tugboat and helps corporations plan for the future. He comes to Burning Man each year as a reminder of the joy and spirit of the 60s.
It's the best community I know. I was around for the communes. I did the Whole Earth Catalog partly so I could help the communes without actually having to live in one. And this is one I want to live in. If you need to get out of the rain, do you mind if I sit out of the rain? Yeah, absolutely, come on in. And food and on and on and on.
This is where you can play drums and bike at the same time. Fully automated.
Some start the day by cruising the playa in their tricked-out Mad Max mobiles or showing off their customized rides for the throngs. And there's plenty of unusual, interactive art to play in, like this piece adorned with rubber chickens.
This is the Reflect Chicken Coop DeVille.
Really? And why?
Why? Because it's a chicken coop, and it's the DeVille because it's all stylish. See, I can kind of get full of myself here and look at all the reflections. I kind of like it.
At Burning Man, some will be dressed to the hilt by morning, though good taste will not necessarily rule the day.
A man can go into the thrift store and buy the ugliest effing dress imaginable. Wear it out here, and I will guarantee you somebody will come up and say, "Oh, what a wonderful dress! Where did you get that?" You gotta love this place.
Others will be undressed to the max. On this chilly morning, some brave but shriveled souls gather for a nude satellite photo. In the real world, this many naked people in one spot could turn into a problem. But at Burning Man, you're supposed to take it all in stride.
You don't get the feeling that the women get hassled too much, despite the fact, because women will walk around half naked.
About nudity? Well, start with the nudity. There are folks out there in this world that, I think it was H.L. Mencken that defined a prude as someone who spends too much of their time worrying that someone might be having a good time. But I don't think it's doing anybody any harm. And I will guarantee one thing, I won't go nude.
Larry Harvey is the man behind Burning Man. A chain-smoking San Francisco bohemian, Harvey first lit an effigy of a man 15 years ago on Baker Beach in the shadow of the Golden Gate Bridge. Having no idea his torch job would eventually turn into a huge happening, folklorists say Harvey burned the 8-foot man, modest by today's dimensions, to mourn a lost love.
Larry Harvey had broken up with a girlfriend, set up this little fire and attracted all these hippies who hung around and started playing music, and then it grew into this tradition.
When the San Francisco Beach Patrol made him leave in 1990, Harvey moved his pyrotechnics to this desolate, federally owned stretch of land.
I need more fire in my life!
Meet a Burning Man regular who should be right at home in the desert.
I am the sheik. See, the sheik, see people say to me all the time, oh, the word's pronounced sheik. I said, well, the guy on BBC says sheik,
When he's not holding forth on the playa, the sheik is Robert Brownstein, a Sausalito, California CPA. Like many of his fellow Burning Men, he keeps up with a huge contingent of festival goers all year long on the internet. Then, at Burning Man, he rids himself of all thoughts of tax shelters and IRS audits.
And I love the idea of going out to the middle of the desert where there's nothing man-made. It's just it's a contrast. It's such a contrast from my day-to-day living, you know.
3, 2, 1.
As day turns into night at the Burning Man Festival, the scene becomes even more carnival-like, with an edge.
The day feels more like a sort of freaky state fair, and then at night it turns into this weird, almost science fiction, futuristic world. It kind of looks like what I imagine Coney Island in its heyday, mixed with like drum circles.
One of the more inventive revelers aims to put a charge into the already festive air.
My favorite guy there was this guy who calls himself Megavolt, who sets up 2 giant Tesla coils. And this guy stands between these 2 balls in a metal suit, conducting the electricity. People just cheering and screaming, Megavolt.
But the ultimate spectator event doesn't occur until the final night of the festival. That's when the man, these days a laser-outlined, wood-filled, 40-foot figure who has loomed over the playa all week, goes up in flame.
Coming up, the sun sets, the ritual heats up. But what about the cops?
They will crack down on open drug use, but they're not going into people's tents and searching them.
Hang in there, the wildest is yet to come.
I need more fire in my life!
As a different drum continues on MSNBC.
On the last night of the Burning Man Festival, as some 30,000 people are treated to a spectacular sight, one has to wonder, is there any damage being done here, other than to a 40-foot man? After all, we don't often see such a potentially volatile mix of freedom, inebriation, and fire in one place. Larry Harvey says that's a good thing.
But about the time he starts to burn, well, it's just me and him burning. And I feel like as organizers, we feel like we've been burning all year long. I guess it feels okay to let every molecule in you free. Let it go. Let it go.
But it isn't easy for Harvey to let go of the pot shots his critics take at him. For one, there are drugs here, and plenty of them. About half the respondents to an unofficial survey say they indulge here. Many smoke marijuana, others take ecstasy. While police say there are usually 20 to 30 drug arrests each year, there's an unwritten rule at Burning Man. You can get high if you don't get caught.
The cops kind of cruise through in patrol cars. They will crack down on open drug use. If you were smoking pot out in public and they saw you, they might bust you. But they're not going into people's tents and searching them.
And although the incidents of sexual assault and theft are about the same as in any small town, Blackrock City isn't immune to crime. Harvey also has to answer the critics who want to know why the penultimate anti-establishment gathering cost as much as $250 for a ticket to get in. Harvey says it costs a bundle to create and clean up Blackrock City. And he says the ticket money supports the people who make the playa percolate.
It went this year for $250,000 we gave to artists for grants. We help the artists primarily because they're folks who kind of live in a gift economy all the time. And the starving artist is not merely a stereotype, it's very often a reality.
Critics aside, Harvey makes no apologies for Burning Man, an event that's lasted 15 years and now has an annual budget of $4 million.
This year we will make enough, I think, to survive for 4 months and sell tickets again. This is not a capitalized operation.
As the festival comes to an end and the Blackrock Desert once again becomes a barren wasteland, many become philosophical. The initiated will go back to their everyday lives, perhaps a bit happier and dirtier and a lot more demented.
I'm searching for a large goat.
Aren't we all?
over the course of the week, I was able to integrate into the community and just really feel free enough to just wear body paint and go dance around this burning figure. And that was fun. It's not something people do in Sausalito.
People should not regard this as a chance to blow off steam, a chance to just get away from the system for a while and be naughty and then come back and then resume your dreary life. What a depressing conclusion.
It's a good way to get back to what really matters. I mean, I got really stressed out before working and whatnot, and I started telling myself if it doesn't interfere with my pulse or my intake of breath, it's not that deep. And coming here reminds you of that. Sun shining, you're alive, the wind hasn't knocked your tin over, let it go.
For me to touch the ground and to be here just reminds me of where I'm from and to keep it simple.
There's no excuse not to go to Burning Man, period. That's it.
As for the future, will anything stop the Burning Man Festival?
And there are a lot of companies, high-tech companies in the Bay Area that basically shut down during the week of Burning Man. So it's a phenomenon which has gone on long enough to be called a movement.
In fact, Larry Harvey wants to entice Silicon Valley millionaires into sponsoring the festival's art and investing in spin-off Burning Man. And he's talking to people in Japan and Europe interested in starting their own Burning Man extravaganzas. For now, though, Harvey seems content to keep defying the odds and doing things his own way at the wackiest town in the West.
They thought I was crazy when I stood here in '90 and said that the nations will come, but nations have come. So let's see what happens next.
And while some think of Burning Man as just a party in the desert, others see it as an oft-repeated act of social rebellion.
I think Burning Man is part of that experimentation that went on in the late 60s and early 70s keeps reappearing. The idea of individual freedom and expression, of a kind of thumbing your nose at the establishment. It's still alive in these countercultures that keep emerging in these seemingly perpetual last days of Western civilization, they keep emerging.
Famous Melissa, over and out.
Coming next, what happens when you mix religion, politics, drugs, and more into a hippie cocktail? Straight from the heart of Haight-Ashbury to Middle America, a 70s commune that lives to today. Join the farm as a different drum continues.
If the sights and sounds of Burning Man look strange to us today, imagine the impression a caravan of buses and broken-down cars made 30 years ago when it showed up carrying a couple hundred long-haired, tie-dyed young people to an abandoned farm on the back roads of Tennessee. This was the beginning of what would become one of the best-known communes of the 1970s. And what's happened there since may be an indicator of what the future holds for today's experiments.
In 1969, America is a nation in turmoil and transition. And as it will again be years later with Burning Man, the epicenter of this radical, expressive youth culture is San Francisco.
San Francisco, of course, was the center of this alternative culture known as hippie, the dropouts, the radicals. It was kind of the mecca for the young, disaffected youth of America. There was people looking for something to believe in.
It's in this wildly experimental environment that a former Marine and college English teacher emerges as a kind of counterculture guru. Stephen Gaskin begins preaching a brand of wisdom to anyone in the Haight-Ashbury section who'll listen, mixing religion, politics, drugs, and just about anything else into a kind of hippie cocktail.
Stephen Gaskin would hold forth talking about communalism and Taoism and taking drugs and how they all mix together and how we could become new people and the birth of a new consciousness. It was very exciting.
Hundreds gather regularly to hear Gaskin speak, Ultimately, many of them will want to spread the good vibes. So, in 1970, a group of about 200, including Stephen Gaskin and his wife, pack up 40 buses, form a traveling caravan, and hit the road. Alan Graff is a 21-year-old student when Gaskin's bus caravan stops at his college.
They were living their beliefs. And to me, that was the most powerful thing you could do as a revolutionary, somebody who wanted to change society for the better, is to actually live your beliefs.
After nearly 2 years of traveling the country, living in buses and doing everything together, including conceiving children, Gaskin and the caravan members decide to settle down. And like others will do years later at Burning Man, they decide to form an alternative community. In this case, a permanent one, a commune.
Living in communes was part of this new consciousness, this new way of being that we were going to develop and spread throughout the world. People said, well, let's go and start these things on. Let's go back to the land. Let's move out there and prove that we can survive as a group, with a different model of how people can live in the world.
They find some land in rural Tennessee, miles away from Haight-Ashbury, and start to live life their own way, with a set of goals foreign to most Americans.
Enlightenment and love and redemption and out to save the world.
Tennessee, Tennessee, there ain't no place I'd rather be. Baby, won't you carry me back to Tennessee?
They call their new commune the Farm and decide to survive by growing, eating, and selling their own fruits, vegetables, and soybean products. Under the guidance of Gaskin's wife, Ina May, a practicing midwife, they will give birth to their babies right on the farm. And they will practice spirituality rather than strict religion, with Stephen Gaskin as the centerpiece.
We considered ourselves like a monastery, a family monastery, and he was the Zen master.
Or a benevolent dictator. Major decisions like building a school are made by all members, but must be approved by Gaskin. There's to be no eating meat or dairy products, and drinking alcohol is considered bad for the soul.
It's bad for your head. Alcohol gets you on ego trips. Alcohol makes you wreck your car. Alcohol makes you fist fight people at drinking parties. Alcohol gets you into your neighbor's old lady.
But smoking pot is another story.
We think that marijuana can be an aid to get you high, and that it can teach you as a teaching aid that there are other levels of consciousness than the ordinary one that you may have learned about in the 3rd grade.
The men let their hair grow. The women go without jewelry and makeup. Some go about building homes which will house as many as 50 people at a time. Others, including families with babies, many born on the caravan, will continue to live on the buses they arrived in. Hardship is seen as a small price to pay for living among friends.
I lived in Atlanta, and I didn't even know my next-door neighbors, and I'd lived there for years and didn't know them at all. And here I do, know them real well.
While farm members agree on most things, they don't always see eye to eye. For instance, many are college-educated, but know little about tools or farming. While Alan Graff wants to play guitar in the farm band, Stephen Gaskin has other ideas.
He saw me, and here I was, a kid fresh out of college. Said, you ought to go drive tractor, forget about this guitar playing.
Learning how to farm and get along with each other is a big challenge, but even bigger at first is learning how to coexist with their rural southern neighbors, many of whom see the farm hippies as outsiders, or worse. And those who arrive with the caravan, like Phil Schweitzer, aren't even sure what to make of the neighborhood.
When we came here, we were like, as we've been fond of saying, like the Martians, landing in the middle of a very strange land. And certainly the locals viewed us that way.
Local tradesman Homer Sanders is a bit perplexed by his new neighbor's looks, but he still does business with them.
Did the hair bother you at first?
Nah, it didn't bother me. Of course, I'd go see it off, but...
If they won't take it off, it won't bother
that's their business, it ain't mine.
Gradually, other curious locals will venture to the farm to buy fruits and vegetables grown there.
I'd like to have some tomatoes, and she wants some tomatoes, and I want some cucumbers and some squash.
The money goes into the commune's account for distribution to the neediest.
We completely shared everything. When you earned money, you turned it into the bank lady. The bank lady would figure out who needed the funds the most, what kids were out of shoes, what food could we afford to buy.
In the 70s, farm members are successfully living on under $5 a day per person.
You don't need money for happiness.
But will the happiness last? Coming up, the farm's charismatic leader is busted and dragged to jail.
We got nailed just obviously stupidly as we possibly could.
What happened to the dream? As a different drum continues on MSNBC.
By the mid-1970s, individuals and entire families from far and wide are showing up at the farm's gate with everything they own stuffed into a car.
They were really from all over. We had an Englishman, we have an Italian who's still with us, we had people from other countries.
Everybody's put to work. Some raise crops or toil in the soy dairy. Others work in the commune's book publishing business or help fix farm machinery. But soon, there's trouble in paradise. As hippies flock to the farm, local authorities often imagine the worst and sometimes find it. In 1971, police bust the place for pot. Stephen Gaskin goes to jail.
You throw a handful of seeds and come back in 3 months and see if the pot fairy has blessed you. They sat out, fertilized it, cultivated it, sat naked and blew flute to it. And we got nailed.
The farm operates basically as a religious community. And it
Meanwhile, the farm is attracting national attention. NBC sends its cameras there, and the Nashville, Tennessee newspaper dispatches one of its top young writers to the farm, Al Gore.
Been there a lot of times. His editor said that Al's story on the farm was one of the best stories he ever did because he had a foot in each camp. He could talk to the hippies about the Tennesseans and talk to the Tennesseans about the hippies.
Gaskin says Gore has a good time during his visits to the farm. And later, Gore will confound Gaskin and others with his response to questions about whether he inhaled.
He never said a word about pot except when some religious right people asked him about it. He said, oh yes, he had smoked some in college, but it was a false experience. Which I don't know what the hell that is. I mean, I got a degree in English and I'm a general semanticist and I don't know what the hell that means.
By the mid-'80s, the bliss of the early days on the farm is fading. Unemployment in surrounding Lewis County is among the highest in the nation, and the farm has grown to almost 1,500 people.
And it was hard for us to make a living out here as well, to support the community that we'd grown into.
It got to the point where people, not only we were making all of the same amount perhaps, but that was so little it wasn't enough to really survive or to be comfortable.
And many of the members who had come here eagerly in their 20s are finding different needs in their 30s.
I think that, there was this great extended adolescence. The baby boomers had a kind of 10-year period where it was like, okay, kids, you can go off and have fun and be back by 1975.
I could probably just answer most of the questions with because we like each other.
And after years of Stephen Gaskin's spiritual guidance and decision-making, some have had enough.
After a while, the idea of Stephen said this or that began to grate on people. They said, well, wait, we're now 30 or so, and we've got our own families. We'd like to make our own decisions.
I'm always reminded about Abbie Hoffman's statement. He says, well, people pretty much blame me for sex, drugs, and rock and roll. He says, but that was only a small part of my work.
By the mid-'80s, almost 3/4 of the farm's once bustling population decides to put away their tie-dyes and hit the road for greener financial pastures.
It's kind of like a mass divorce from people who have been very close.
It looks like the dream of a better and different life, fostered years earlier in Haight-Ashbury, is over. Alan Graff reluctantly leaves the farm for good in the 80s.
When you start off and you're 20 years old and you're idealistic and you're out to save the world, you can make it in a school bus. But then when you're 32 and you have two screaming kids who want, attention right then and, everything that kids need. The school bus doesn't make it anymore.
But others will stay at the farm and find a way to keep the dream alive there. The farm is still the farm, but with some new twists. The biggest change is in its business structure.
Right now it's more of a collective. We live in a way that where people are independent in managing their own funds, and we pay dues into the community for services and for the management of the community.
Phil Schweitzer, after a 10-year absence, is back at the farm, running a small video business and making only a modest living. But he's where he wants to be.
To me, it's the best of both worlds. I can live in a very rural setting, very removed from the intensity of city life, and yet have such a great group of people around me that are right next door.
Stephen Gaskin's wife, Ina May, author of a popular counterculture book on natural childbirth, still runs the farm's birthing clinic. This woman, a lawyer from Atlanta, has come to the farm to stay for a few weeks and have her baby.
These ladies just have an awesome reputation here of making good decisions and helping you do things in a reasonable way. So I feel safe here. That's why I'm here.
I just feel very blessed to get to live here. I love the long-term relationships. There's not too many midwives in the country that get to live with their results.
Houses on the farm that used to be overflowing with people are now single-family dwellings. And there's still the occasional newcomer, like Gwinnell Dismukes. She moved here recently from Washington, D.C. to give her kids a safe place to grow up.
I have just tried to get my own situation together and make sure that my children were in a good space. I was very much welcomed here, and this is a community that really appreciates diversity, really appreciates African culture.
And the once exalted Stephen Gaskin has let go of his Zen master role. He's just a member of the community now.
It's the closest you can come to seceding from the Union without having the pony soldiers come to take you back.
But as the members of the farm grow older, will their dreams fade?
Coming up, 30 years later, did the farm experiment work? What about the kids raised there?
I definitely felt like a freak.
How did they turn out living their lives to the beat of a different drum?
What becomes of our utopias, the places we create to satisfy the yearning to be different and free from convention? Can places like Burning Man and the farm withstand the passage of time and the lures of mainstream life? Or will they become like so many other experiments and fade away, becoming footnotes in history? And as it turns 30, there are serious questions about the life expectancy of the farm. Many of the answers will depend upon the children. Most of the 60 kids who live here attend the farm school right on the grounds.
Eucalyptus. Can everybody say eucalyptus? Eucalyptus. I grew up.
The school is state certified and offers the children, most of whom will want to attend college, some distinct advantages.
We're some of those people that the universities check out for when they're searching for like homeschool and that kind of kids. The universities are looking for those people right now. 3 out of the last 4 spelling bee winners were homeschooled. The universities are hip to that.
But as in most small communities, as children become teenagers, having an active social life matters a lot. And on the farm, there simply aren't many young people left to carry on. 18-year-old Kevin Biko Cassini loves the woods and the freedom here, but he may not stay for much longer. Among other things, he says it's tough to find women his age to connect with.
A lot of the parents with daughters of that age moved away, and so they left a whole team of guys here who are all gone now, probably largely because they wanted to meet more women.
And what of the children who grew up here, the children of the original hippie caravan? Many are now close to 30, and while they come back each summer to visit, almost all have moved on. Like many of the kids who grew up on the farm, Rena Mundo left for the hustle and bustle of city life. Rena's father, Jose, and mother, Jan, who were among the founding families of the farm, eventually split up. She now writes and produces documentaries in New York City, a place that couldn't be more different than the farm.
I'd been visiting New York and I loved it. I loved the energy of the city. I loved all the possibilities and the different cultures.
While she appreciates New York's vitality, she still cherishes and misses the farm's gentler familiarity.
And I think we all value this place and we all, in a sense, consider this our real home. I know this land like the back of my hand. The type of moss that grows on the trees, the smell of the dirt roads after the rain.
Susanna Froman has mixed feelings about her farm upbringing. There are the blissful times.
To be able to ride your horse to school and like tether them outside of the playground and then go inside and go to school with all of these people who are extended family members, many of whom you live with as well as go to school with, was definitely something special.
But when she and others get older, a familiar dynamic comes into play, the basic human need to belong.
Whenever we left, I just felt sort of ostracized from the rest of the world. I felt embarrassed a little bit. It took me 3 years to tell somebody I was from the farm, from a commune, because I was embarrassed about it. I wanted to be like everybody else.
All the boys had long hair, braids. We would show up in tie-dye t-shirts, and there was a lot of taunting. A lot of the boys, were taunted, "Are you a girl or a boy?"
Looking for more opportunity, Susanna Froman's parents move off the farm in the 80s.
They just cut their hair, and we drove away in a little beat-up Volvo and slept on the floor of this rented house, and, just started from scratch. And within a few years, they had sort of, just built the American dream. I mean, they cut their hair and they started playing the game.
After finishing college, Susanna gets a job in San Francisco that allows her to sometimes help people like herself.
I am a photojournalist. I work for the San Jose Mercury News. I use my camera as a tool for people who don't have a voice, to help find unsung heroes in the community.
Let me put a couple more things on it.
And sometimes the children of the grand experiment to build a utopia find an unexpected treasure years later. Former farm kids Julie Kelman and Daniel Hunt found each other years after leaving the commune. Now they're married.
I think that we bonded easily because of our backgrounds and, being family friends and whatnot. Our parents are friends as well, and so we had a lot of history together.
Yeah, I understood where he came from, and there's a really strong trust between the two of us.
Wide load coming through.
Together, Daniel and Julie run a plant nursery in Aptos, California, not far from the farm's roots in San Francisco.
My parents were always gardening. Everybody on the farm was gardening. It was a way of life to grow our own food, and I love it now. It's just a great way for me to make a living.
While it's clear that the farm now has a rich past, what about its future? The elders, like Phil Schweitzer, worry about what happens when they get too old to keep the farm going, without a next generation to take up the slack.
At this point, there are no easy answers. You either come and make your own business, or you're content to commute to a local city, even Nashville, which is about an hour and some away, and not everyone's willing to do that. So it is a challenge.
We wouldn't ever want this place to all of a sudden disappear. I think if that's what was going to happen, a few of us would try a little harder to get back here.
But regardless of what becomes of the farm, the experiment that started 30 years ago in San Francisco has had a huge impact on lives.
A lot of the experimentation that happened in those years failed. We were naive about what we were doing and how we were going to change the world, but there was a bravery in it, and we were adventuresome. I think we can honor ourselves for what we did back then.
I think that what we did speaks for itself. I think it was phenomenally enriching, and anybody who was here learned a lot.
I come back to the farm because it is my home. It's where I come from. It's where I will return. I want to be buried on the farm. I mean, it's my home and my heart.
As for now, the old hippies say the good vibes are still here. In fact, they never really left.
It was an experiment, and we've been through many twists and turns, but we're still here.
These are my friends, and this is where I'm allowed to be who I am, which is one of the things I find precious.
It seems the economy may be making it harder for people to chase their dreams of utopia. With job opportunities so scarce, the population of the farm is now back down to around 200. That's roughly the same size it was when it started. Meanwhile, Burning Man is feeling the crunch too. Attendance is down 5%, the first drop in years. Festival organizers attribute the downturn to the disappearance of dot-com jobs in the region. I'm Forrest Sawyer. Thanks for watching.